In this video, we're gonna cover 5 training mistakes that are making you slower and tell you exactly how to fix them. I've worked with hundreds of athletes from high school level all the way to professional, and I've consistently seen these 5 training mistakes holding people back from being their fastest. Having written hundreds of training programs and talked to a ton of other strength coaches and even talked to Olympic sprinters about how to train to get faster, I can guarantee that if you fix these things, you will get faster. Let's go ahead and dive into it. Training mistake number 1 is not enough rest in between sets. This is something that a lot of athletes do, especially if they come from a bodybuilding background where you're trying to just cram a whole bunch of volume into your workouts. When it comes to training for speed, we want less volume of repetitions, but more quality and faster repetitions. Because speed requires a lot of neuromuscular adaptations, your nervous system needs to be firing near 100% for each of the repetitions for them to actually translate to improving your speed. Here's a good way to think about this. If you're doing 8 reps on back squat and you rest about 30 seconds in your next set, you can only get 6 repetitions due to that short rest. That may be okay for burning your muscles out and doing some muscle growth, but if you were to wait 3 to 4 minutes before doing your next set and you were able to get 8 or 9 repetitions, then your nervous system would be working closer to 100%. So even if you pushed yourself as hard as you could go after that 1 minute of rest to get those 6 reps, you could have done 8 or 9 with adequate rest, meaning that those 6 reps that you did weren't near 100%. They weren't even near 90%. And we know that for speed, we need to be at 95% or above of our maximum output. That may be a little bit oversimplified in terms of the sets and reps in the gym, but you could think of this in your speed training as well. If you can run 100 meters in 12 seconds, then there's not going to be much benefit to you running 100 meters in 14 to 15 seconds. For efforts like a 100-meter run, you want to keep your effort within 5% or about within half a second of your best. This is going to ensure that the adaptations that you're getting from that are truly going to translate to maximum speed. You're not going to be able to do that if you don't rest adequately between sets. Okay, let's simplify this whole concept into 2 rules that you can follow. When you're lifting weights, you want to have 3 to 4 minutes of rest between sets. And then as a rule of thumb for sprinting, for each 10 meters of running near top speed, you want 1 minute of rest. So if you're doing 40 meters of top speed work, you need 4 minutes of rest. If you're doing 60 meters, you need 6 minutes of rest. This is a good rule of thumb, and having these longer rest periods will translate to improving your sprint times. Training mistake number 2 is not tracking your progress. Ideally, we want training to be consistent from one week to the next so that we can track times and compare from week to week. This is really where you turn general stress from training into fitness. By measuring each week and comparing to the week before, you'll be able to actually see if your efforts are consistent and if they're improving from week to week. If you're just doing a random workout every time that you get to the track, you're not going to know if you're getting better from week to week. There may be a lot of general stress that you're putting on your body, but you're not turning that into specific fitness for running. It can be really helpful to track multiple PRs here. So instead of just having your 60 meter, 100 meter, and 200 meter PR, to have PRs for individual drills and individual training efforts, and then see if you can beat those within training. Mistake number 3 is not including enough preparatory work. Having seen this from the strength and conditioning coach side as well as the physical therapist side, I can tell you how much benefit there is to preparatory work from both a rehab and performance standpoint. For example, a lot of people think of plyometric training as just maximal jumps. So just go into training, do a handful of maximal jumps, and that's it for their training. This may actually be okay in the short term, but long term, it can be really beneficial to have some base preparatory work. This would include things like submaximal jumps and rhythmic skips and hops. Athletes who include this as the majority of their plyometric training can maintain really good, strong, healthy ankles and Achilles tendons to be able to handle the more maximal jumps. If all you're doing is the maximal jumps, then you're putting a really high stress on your body with them and not really giving your body enough preparatory work. And that may not be the optimal strategy long term. I actually like to see a distribution of around 20 to 30% of what we would call intensive or maximal plyometrics, and then 70% of your volume being more base work, or what we would call extensive plyometrics, where we're just preparing our Achilles tendon and our ankles and our joints for the loads of the maximal jumping. You can also think of things like training isometrics for your hamstrings and your adductors as good preparatory work to include as well. Again, this will lay the foundation and support your faster, more intense speed training. Mistake number 4 is only including full range of motion squats. Now, if you're thinking, Matt, the only thing I do in the gym is diddly squat, well, then anything will probably help. But if you're trying to optimize your training plan, or if I'm working with a high-level track and field athlete, I'm going to distribute squats this way. Off season, I'm going to prioritize more deep range of motion, full squats. That may make up to half of the year for some athletes. The other half of the year in the preseason and in-season period, I'm going to prioritize more partial range of motion squats with quarter squats or half squats. These are going to be more joint angle specific to training. And I've actually even done a research review on this topic in a previous video to show just how much better these carry over to sprint performance than do full range of motion squats. So there's a time and a place for both. You can use those full range of motion squats to lay the groundwork and the foundation for the power work and the quarter squats that you'll do closer to the season. I would also recommend to train partial range of motion with more than just bilateral squats. You can use things like explosive power step-ups or drop lunges to get powerful and explosive triple extension in that top range of motion. And then mistake number 5 is outrunning your technique. This is something that Simon Hansen brought up on the Movement System podcast, which I will link in the description below if you want to watch that full podcast. As an Olympic athlete, he said he saw this mistake a lot with younger athletes training, is that they'll just let their technique go and outrun what they can handle. This is usually from a lack of work building up the capacity to maintain technique for a long period of time. Athletes who can maintain their technique longer can maintain their speed longer and finish a race stronger. If you feel like you accelerate really well, but then people catch up to you or pass you at the end of the race and you don't know why, you may not have enough technique work in your training. That technique work can come from executing really well at drills like these quick switches or these stiff leg sprints. It's really important how you execute these movements and that you're training them consistently enough to build up the capacity to maintain your technique for a long period of time. Just look at how Simon executes something as simple as a high knee run. You'll see a lot of athletes who are doing a high knee run very sloppy, and it's not translating to improving their technique. This is a difference I saw working with high school athletes versus NFL athletes as well, seeing their technique and how they're executing drills. A lot of the high schoolers who aren't going to go on to the next level are sloppy in the way that they're performing these drills, whereas NFL athletes are already great and they're working even more on executing their technique perfectly. And this is what sets them apart from other athletes over time. If you can only maintain your speed mechanics for 20 to 30 meters at top speed, you need to train that and slowly push to 30, 35, 40, not push yourself right to 80-meter efforts where you're just grinding through it with bad technique. Having a solid training plan can help you correct these mistakes. I'll link to some of the ones I recommend down in the description below. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.